Welcome back, everybody. It is time for another Roadie story time. This is my little series where I just kind of sit and tell my experiences and stories of working for bands on the road. And I gotta fully admit, this one isn't really a story time from the road or anything like that. We'll call this kind of an intermission episode. I kind of just want to talk about something specific to the industry and kind of break it down and relate it to these videos I've been doing. And that is the old adage, what happens on the road stays on the road.
The first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club.
Welcome to everybody that's live on Twitch. That's where we film these, live on Twitch. Hello, chat. If you'd like to join when we do these live, you can go to twitch.tv/TankTheTech. But let's talk about this phrase here, because for a very, very long time in the music industry, especially like early in the 80s and 90s and stuff, touring was seen as this very mysterious thing. You know, personalities were larger than life. And when you start working for bands, you often hear kind of the same thing with that old Las Vegas thing. It's like what happens on tour stays on tour.
The second rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club.
Chat, why do you think that is? Pumpkin Writing says mystery, some of it, yeah, sure. Mini Ramps Are Fun says don't want to get canceled. I think it's less of that, but there probably is a thought in some people's heads of that, sure. Other people say gatekeeping, band image, you know, stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, I think those are all things. I like to joke and say that a lot of people in the industry are just assholes and they don't want people to know they're assholes. So I just like spit all over the camera. Whoops. And I don't want to suggest that the majority of people in the music industry are assholes, because that's not true, but there are a lot of shitty people out there, and they're probably afraid that if people find out that they're as shitty as they are, they don't want that getting out there. That's why people say don't meet your heroes, because you might be disappointed. But the weird truth about the music industry that like we joke about sometimes on the road, but nobody ever really thinks about, the music industry is one of the interesting jobs that like we don't really have rules. We don't have an HR department. Dude, if tours had an HR department, people would be getting fired and canceled left and right. And I'm not talking about because anything weird going on or anything like that. I'm just talking like, you know, the way that you can talk to people and the jokes that are told and stuff like that are stuff that in a normal 9-to-5 corporate workplace, like, yeah, you'd get in trouble. And it's a very loose work environment. And I think that's why a lot of people enjoy touring and stuff like that, is because it is not like a normal job. There really are not a lot of people there are not a lot of corporate rules that you have to follow. If you get on the road and you get along with everybody and you do your job well and stuff like that, you can pretty much, you know, do and act however you want, as long as you're not giving the band a bad image, the band that you're working for a bad image, as long as you're getting your job done. Sugar says kind of like being a chef. I've never been a chef, but I have worked in a restaurant, and I mean, that is more corporate-y than the music industry for sure, but like, I get what you're saying, like, especially on rushes and stuff. It gets pretty wild in restaurants, and they talk to each other like you shouldn't in a normal workplace and stuff. But no, like the music industry is a very loose place, which is actually kind of great, to be honest. It makes it a lot of fun, and you get to have a lot of cool experiences, and it does make for a lot of stories and stuff like that. But you know, a lot of people do go back to that whole whatever happens on tour stays on tour thing. Like, you shouldn't talk about this kind of stuff. And that kind of applies to what I've been doing with Roadie Storytime, because even only after like 3 videos, I've had a lot of feedback from this stuff. Mostly positive, I will say that. And that makes me feel pretty good. Like, people find these stories entertaining. And you know, I don't need validation for this kind of stuff, but it does make me feel awesome that I have actually had a lot of messages from bands and artists and other roadies, some I've worked with, some I haven't, that have told me like, dude, this is so like rad that you're actually open to talking about this without, you know, like spilling too much or trying to intentionally drag people, which that's not my point. I'm not trying to intentionally drag people. I did see some comments on my first video where I was talking about my experience of getting fired by Red and stuff, where people are like, yeah, I agree, fuck these guys. And I was like, what do you mean? What are you agreeing with? I never said that. I even said at the end of the video that I was cool with those guys. You know, people hear what they want to. And yeah, my intention with this is not to drag people. It's just to talk about my touring experiences. But it is very cool to see some other bands that have been like, yeah, keep doing it. It makes me feel better about it, because there have also been some comments that I've gotten from people and messages from people that are like, you're breaking the roadie code. What happens on tour stays on tour. You shouldn't be talking about anything any of this. And to me, I'm just like, why? I'm just telling personal experiences from my time on the road. How often do we see people with 9-to-5 jobs bitching about their coworkers and talking about their work environments and stuff? Why is it that that's like socially acceptable, but for some reason I can't talk about being on tour? Kind of don't care. I've also seen a lot of comments from other people that were like, dude, I can't believe it took you 4 years of doing YouTube to finally get into like telling stories like this. And yeah, I get that. And if I'm being 100% honest with you guys, part of that was at first I was a little scared to do it because of that whole stereotype of you shouldn't talk about what goes on the road. And at first I was a little worried about, you know, maybe future employers or other people being like, oh, this guy talks too much or whatever. But I'll fully admit I'm at a point where I don't care. I just don't fucking care anymore. Again, I'm not dragging people. I'm just telling my personal experiences. And I feel like I'm at a point now with this YouTube content where I have a reputation. I've built the trust of viewers and stuff like that. And I feel like I can tell these stories and nothing will happen. Don't get me wrong. I don't feel untouchable. There might be some tours out there that maybe in the future I don't get hired for because they think I'm going to talk about stuff, but maybe that's a bigger issue. Maybe they have something to hide. I don't know. But yeah, I'm just at a point where I'm comfortable doing this and I don't mind talking about my personal experiences on the road anymore. And I think you can compare this kind of to when all the stuff went on with like pro wrestling in the 90s where people started talking about the behind the scenes and how it works and people were mad and they're like, you can't talk about this. There has to be mystery to this. Like you can't be telling these secrets and stuff. And I was like, yeah, well, why? People think it's going to ruin the mystique of like mystery with bands and the rock star image and stuff like that. And I'm like, it's already been ruined. Social media has connected people more than ever. And the days of like rock stars being larger than life and untouchable are gone, dude. I mean, you know, you got people like Ronnie Radke, who's one of the biggest names in like modern metal and alternative metal right now. Constantly on social media interacting with people for better or worse. But you know what I mean? There was a day and age where the only time you heard from or saw these stars, these rock stars and stuff was like when they were on stage or doing interviews. Those days are over. There's no privacy anymore. So like whatever. And as Twitchy Keygun just said, I think the stereotype of like backstage is just a big party, like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I can't speak to if it ever was because I wasn't touring in like the 70s and 80s and 90s, obviously, but it's definitely not like that now. Most of the days we're all sitting in a dressing room backstage just scrolling through our phones and shit. It's more of a job than people think it is. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, there have been many times on the road where we've partied after shows and stuff like that. And like, there have been wild times and stuff, but it is very much a professional job. I've never been on a tour where we've been like partying during the daytime and stuff like that. Well, I take that back because when we did like country festivals in Cancun and stuff like, yeah, it's a party the whole time. But like, those are like pool parties and stuff. Like nobody's taking anything seriously. But on major show days and stuff, nah, like people are partying afterwards. It isn't like you see on like, you know, if you watch The Dirt about Motley Crue on Netflix and stuff, it's not like that anymore at all. So yeah, I really think this whole what happens on tour stays on tour is just a very outdated thing at this point, and I'm really not worried about talking about these stories. I just kind of wanted to, you know, talk about this a little because there have been a lot of people that have brought it up recently, and I'm not worried about it. Listen, I'm very smart about what I say. Nothing I've said story-wise can be considered slander because it's true. And, you know, I've had some comments question the validity of my stories, and I get it. I'm just some random dude on the internet telling stories. At the end of the day, there really is no way to know if I'm telling the truth or not, to be honest, for you guys watching. I could be making up everything. I'm not. I give you my word, I'm not. But I get where people are coming from when they're like, why should we believe you? Especially when you're not naming names. Like my last video where I didn't name the band I was working for. I had a comment where people were like, why don't you name the band so they can defend themselves? I was like, well, what do they need to defend? I didn't name them. I just told my personal experience from my point of view and didn't name anybody because I wasn't trying to trash anybody. Yeah, and I'm currently tour managing now. Like, that's the funny thing. For anybody that doesn't know, like, I'm not like a former roadie. I'm still tour managing now. I tour manage Electric Callboy. It's like the running joke on this channel. Did you know that I tour manage Electric Callboy? There were people that were like, aren't you afraid that the Electric Callboy guys are going to get weirded out that you're like talking about all this stuff? And I was like, the band that allows me to wear a GoPro for every show and film everything that's happening for vlogs on my channel? You think they're worried about me talking about stuff? Fuck no, dude. They literally let me film everything. They're not worried about a thing because they have nothing to hide. I don't want to suggest that everybody has something to hide, but yeah, usually when you get to a point when people are, you know, being like, stop talking, like there's something to hide there. And I have worked for some bands that maybe do, but again, I'm not here to drag anybody or ruin anybody's career. We won't be talking about a lot of, you know, that kind of stuff, but yeah. But anyways, yeah, I just wanted to address a couple things before we really, you know, can continue this series, because I've had some comments, I've gotten some messages where people are like, aren't you worried? And no, the answer is no, because again, I'm just telling my personal experiences. I don't plan on, you know, trying to ruin anybody or anything like that. And it is what it is, man. And I truly think that a lot of people find this stuff interesting. Not a lot of people get to go on tour. And I will fully admit that our jobs as roadies are probably some of the coolest things. Like, I say this all the time, like, we have some of the coolest jobs, in my opinion. Like, we get to travel the world, we get to see different people, see different places, experience fun events. Like, there's no reason why this job should have drama in it, but it does, like any other job. There's no reason why people should be shitty, because again, these jobs are very cool. We could be working worse jobs, so yeah, I don't know. It is what it is. Pumpkin Writing just said it's the tour experience without the hassle of traveling. Like, that's kind of my goal here. I want you guys to get a little taste of what it's like growing up in the industry and or growing in the industry and working jobs and stuff. Well, just, you know, having some fun story times, and that's really it. But anyways, that's going to wrap it up for this little midway intermission segment of Roadie Storytime. We'll get back into more actual stories. Like, I'm probably not going to stop and address any of this kind of stuff like whenever it happens. But since this is a relatively new series, I feel like I should give you my thoughts on what's going on and stuff like that. So to everybody that was here on Twitch, thank you for hanging out. Again, if you're watching on YouTube later, you can go to twitch.tv/TankTheTech when we do these stories and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm going to get going. So thank you again for watching. Wherever you are in the world, be safe, be kind to each other. If you'd like to check out more stories, I'll have a playlist linked at the end of this video. And yeah, that's about it. I don't know how to end this. So bye.